Hello, I'm Wade Henderson. Join me now for conversations with our neighbors who create visual art. This is Delta Hands. In this edition, we'll meet a New Orleans native who makes beauty that will last for centuries, and a painter whose work inspires his life. Also, a sculptor who has found his greatest success in being himself. We begin with Gerri Puyau, who works in a technique of enamel, which is granulated glass bonded with copper.
The colors never fade. They found pieces that dated back to the 6th century BC. The reds were still red and the blues were still blue and the greens were still green. It can be destroyed with a hammer, but it doesn't warp, it doesn't fade, it'll last forever. I will have pieces that'll outlast me, that's something I can leave behind. Something that my children will have and enjoy. I like the feel of the work in my hands. I like to feel the copper in my hands, that I'm actually molding it and creating it into something that will turn out to be an art form. And it's a cold, hard piece of copper that eventually softens, molds, and takes on color and becomes a thing of beauty. And it's a hands-on project, it really is. Because from beginning to end, you've got this cold metal that is trying to tell you, I don't want to be like that. And you work with it until you get it exactly like you want it, like you think it wants to be, and in the end, it's very satisfying. It does teach you to be meticulous, more organized, but the biggest thing that I have learned is patience, because I'm not a very patient person. I don't like to go to restaurants and stand in line. I'll leave first. But this medium has taught me that you have to be patient. The copper has to be completely grease-free. It has to be clean so that the enamel will adhere to it. Any little bit of oil, even the oil from your hands, will cause the enamel to ball up and it won't adhere, it'll pop off. So that's the first step, is to clean the enamel thoroughly, and then there's a coat, an adhesive that's put on, sprayed on usually onto the copper, and then the enamel is sifted on through different screens. There's a very fine screen, depends upon what effect you're looking for. Most of it's done through an 80 mesh screen. And it's sifted on, and then for the painting, I start out with a sketch. Then I'll make copies of the sketch and then make stencils from the copies. You can block out with your stencil the areas you want one color, sift the other color, and so forth, and it's built up in layers like that. The way I use a fine brush, and it's almost dotted on, like pointillism. And this is what they did back in the 14th, 15th century when they were doing those little cameo portraits. They would use a very fine brush and just dots, you know, until they got one area filled with the color that they wanted. For shadows in the face and the different skin tones. And this is what I do and why it takes me so long. Each layer is dried before it can be fired. I enjoy it when my first firing, when it comes out of the kiln and my pattern is set. And then I know I can go from there. That's the most exciting thing, is when you first take it out of the kiln. And when it comes out, it's completely different because the colors change from the heat. And then as it cools down, the true color will come back. And at first, when I first did it, I was scared. And I said, oh my gosh, I lost everything. Everything's gone. And as it cooled down, it would come back. And like the reds, you have to watch the red in the kiln because of the gold oxide. It is very soft. And if you fire it at too high a temperature, it'll fire off and it'll be black. But it does turn much darker, almost black normally. And when you take it out the kiln, this area that you had a bright red is black, and it's frightening. But then as it cools, the red will come in. And I'll have 2 or 3 pieces I'm working on at one time. I'll have one cooling off from a firing, and another one drying, and one that I'm working on. From beginning to end, you're really at the mercy of the heat, the fire. So you have to control that, and it's difficult to control. But you learn. I've been doing this since 1972. Being born and raised in the city of New Orleans, I've always been intrigued with the mystique of the city, the voodoo and so forth that's supposed to go on. I lived in an area where we had this, she wasn't a voodoo queen, but she was a healer. She was called Mother of Twine. And she was a very fascinating lady. And I would steal away to her house and sit on her porch sometimes and just listen to stories that she would tell. And of course, my mother didn't know I was down there. But it was, she was a big influence on me. New Orleans was a big influence on this art. It still is.
As Delta Hands continues, we'll see through the eyes of a world-traveling Baton Rougean and enjoy the energetic imagination of a Jackson sculptor.